this is Brett with Spark Up Dance. I've gotten a lot of requests from both students and other people asking about what kind of tools and apps they'll need and how to set them up in order to be able to do a private lesson with me via video chat. So I thought I would go ahead and break those down for you and make a step-by-step guide to make the process nice and easy. Let's go check it out.
Okay, let's look at some dance spaces for your video lesson. We want somewhere that's nice and functional, easy to be seen by the camera, and that allows you to have plenty of space to move around in. So the type of floors we're looking for that are ideal is going to be something like either a hardwood floor, linoleum, or tile floor without very thick cracks. Those type of floors are going to be really easy to turn and dance on and aren't going to be too hard on your knees or any of your other joints. The other thing that you can use if you need to is carpet. I recommend not using carpet because turning on carpet creates a lot of friction when you're trying to do something like rotate or turn, but it is possible and it's not bad for your joints either. I would, at all costs, if possible, avoid concrete. Concrete is terrible on your joints. It's really rough, and usually you'll be like in a garage or something where it tends to be echoey during the video. So if you can, avoid that. But I'd use that as a last resort if possible. Now, we also want to make sure that the turnability on it is nice. So even if you do have something like a hardwood floor, some hardwood floors can be really sticky. So I'd recommend really making sure to clean them as much as possible or have them clean any type of turning floor, really. So just make sure you try to do like a small little baby turn on it and see if it's too sticky or what. Last thing you want to do is try to put any strain on any of your joints. Okay, so then the next thing we have is space. So what I usually recommend doing is spreading your arms out nice and wide and walking around in a circle. If you can essentially spread your arms out wide, then that's a fairly good space. And even more ideally, if you can extend your arm and your leg in both directions, one forward, one backwards, and you have space from there all the way around the room, then that's pretty good spacing for what you need. The other thing that is ideal, but not always possible, and we're going to talk more about angles here in a minute to make it more possible, is to see if you have enough distance to where you can put your camera so that your whole body can be seen. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And then, of course, you're totally welcome to just wear socks. If you have dance shoes, fantastic, great, you can wear those. But if you don't, then just being in your socks is fine. I don't recommend doing it barefoot unless you have super, super thick calluses that you can turn on. But otherwise, I'd try to just stick to wearing socks during the lesson or dance shoes if applicable. All right, so now let's take a look exactly what tools are we going to need physically here. Well, of course, you're going to want some type of smartphone with a front-facing camera. Then to set up this camera, you're going to want something like a tripod. Now, a tripod is ideal, and when you're using it, please make sure that if you have a strap going against it, that the strap is not facing the side of the screen, because we're going to want to use the front-facing camera. And then if you don't have a tripod, then in order to help your phone stand up, we'll probably be looking into using some type of weight. In this video in particular, we'll be using a little pottery cup that I won at a dance competition. The last thing is we're going to need Wi-Fi, some type of internet connection preferably. Now, you can use the cell service on your phone as well, but just be aware of whatever your plan is for your phone to be able to do that. Wi-Fi is usually a lot cheaper and, generally speaking, a lot faster. So if you have some kind of Wi-Fi in the house, that'd be great. Okay, so now we're going to be setting up the angle. So before we start talking about setting up with a weight, I'm first going to show you guys what this all looks like from a tripod, and we're just going to talk about the height at which you can set your camera or your phone and the advantages and disadvantages of each. So I am going to get into how we can use the weight to help set up the phone, but just bear with me because we're just going to start off using the tripod. Okay, So, assuming you have a tripod or your weight set up where you want it, you can first go for a high angle, usually something like a really tall bookshelf, or maybe if you can put it up into like a cupboard or something, that could work really well. The advantage of this is that the teacher has a fantastic view of just about everything while you're dancing. The footwork can be a little obscure, but for the most part, it's a really easy view to teach from. The bad part is that for the student themselves, though, it's kind of hard to see your teacher when he's demonstrating things because you got to look up and maybe stand on your tiptoes to get a good view of your phone. So be careful of that. Then the other one we have is something in the middle. So something like a table or chair that's probably about waist height, maybe up to rib height. It's a really great view for everything, honestly. So this is kind of the ideal. But the only problem with it is that it usually requires a lot of space trying to fit both the head and the feet in. So if you have a lot of space for your phone to be distant from you, then this is absolutely ideal. But otherwise, um, you might want to look at one of the other options. And do note that not only can you use a table, but you could use a chair as well. And especially if you have something like my tripod, then you can wrap it around the chair or at least sit it on the chair. So do note that that's an option as well. Then the last one we have is being low, generally just on the floor. This is probably the easiest one to set up and is going to be accessible to just about everybody. So this is definitely something anybody can use without having to worry about furniture or anything like that. But it can make some of the movements from the teacher's perspective hard to see, specifically in the upper body and how your foot is interacting fully with the floor. As well as a student, you're going to have to like bend over a lot to see what your teacher is doing as well. So I don't know about you, but having to bend over all the time isn't any fun. But if you can, it works. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the setup with the phone in case you don't have a tripod, using the weight to hold up your phone. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to put the whatever the weight is, like a box or in this case a cup, down in front of where the phone's going to be, and then you're going to lean the part of the phone in front of the weight where the camera is not. So make sure the camera is not up against the weight and it's on the other side. And then you're going to angle the phone, if it's like a mid to high placement that you've put here, slightly downwards, or just to make sure that it's as straight as possible. Now, sometimes phones can be a little slippery, or you need to do a vertical angle. We're going to talk about angles, vertical versus horizontal in a minute. But you can actually put it inside the cup. This does kind of cover the bottom of the phone, but it's really easy to take the phone out of the cup, look at it while your teacher's teaching, and then put it back into the cup as long as it's thin enough. If you have a case over it, a lot of times they can be too thick to fit into cups, so just be aware of that. Then if you're really having trouble and your phone's kind of slipping around, doesn't fit in the cup, then I would recommend probably using two weights and then essentially pinching them in between the two weights, and then you can really set it at just about any angle you want from there. Also make sure that the weight in the cup is as close to the edge as possible, so you're not getting the edge of whatever it's sitting on in your video. All right, so if you're placing your phone on the floor, what I would usually recommend, you can just do this against the wall if need be, but I like to use an object personally so that I don't have to worry about it sliding off the wall or whatever, and I can make adjustments for the depth. But essentially you put the weighted object behind your device and then just lean your device onto it. Since you kind of need an upwards angle anyways, then sitting your phone slightly back from the top isn't going to really hurt anything, whether it's vertical or whether it's horizontal. So when you're putting on the floor, just lean it against it rather than putting the weight in front. All right, so let's talk about lighting. So when you're looking to be able to be seen on your camera, every camera is going to be a little bit different, but generally speaking, you want to use either some type of artificial lighting, or you want to use the natural daylight, or maybe even something like candles, though those will only help a little bit. So once you have lots of lighting in your room, pay attention to where the light's coming from, because it might be too dark if it's from every angle but the front. So what you want to do is you essentially want to take a light, a really bright one preferably, and put it down either next to your camera or just in front of it, to where the light can shine directly on you, so that you'll be all lit up and you can be seen very easily from the front or whatever angle the camera is facing. Brighter colored clothing tends to be a lot easier to see in cameras than darker clothing, but you can get away with darker clothing if you have really great lighting. So here's just a couple of tips that's going to make things just a little bit easier for you. First off, vertical video versus horizontal. If possible, and you can get enough distance, I recommend doing horizontal video. This makes it really easy for you to be able to have any type of space moving from side to side, and just enough going forward and backwards so that you can both see as much as possible. The problem with vertical video, it can work and it can get your body and can make the depth better going forward and backwards, but it's very, very common to accidentally extend your arms too far or to essentially just walk out of the video. It's also hard to see it if we're using a computer or something like that, because it really narrows the vision. So if at all possible, try to use horizontal video and stay away from vertical video if possible. But if vertical video is all you have room for, then that's okay. Okay, so then the other tip that we have is using shoes to make a perimeter. So after you set your phone up, one thing you can do is that you can go around with some shoes or some type of small object that'll sit on the floor and place it both for the depth and the width of your video, so that you can essentially tell when do I start walking out of the video to where my feet are covered, or to where I start walking outside of what can be seen on the video. So that's just a really nice marker to have so that you don't have to worry about turning invisible all of a sudden. Now that we've looked into that, let's take a look to see what kind of apps and software we'll need in order to have a successful lesson. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do here is we need to actually go into our apps and pull up either the App Store if you have an iPhone or the Play Store if you have an Android. So personally, I have an Android, but this is a family member's phone who I'm using, and they happen to have an Apple phone. So we're going to go ahead and tap on the App Store first, and then we're going to search for Google Duo. This is a very, very easy to use app that essentially uses your contacts and anybody else who also has Google Duo to be able to make contact with face-to-face via video. So essentially, we've pulled up Google Duo here. We're going to go ahead and open it up, and it's of course going to ask you a couple questions. I've already installed it, so we're going to go ahead and click I agree on this. Essentially, I always encourage people to look and actually read everything that's going on here. I've been through this before, so I'm just kind of tapping through it, but please read through it and make sure you're okay with all the settings that pop up. After you do that, you're going to put in your phone number, and then after that, it's going to ask you for a verification code. Just go ahead and slap that right in there, and then it'll essentially pop up with all the contacts who have Google Duo, and the ones that don't. So you'll of course want to be sending me the message. My phone number is on the screen, 541-808-4543. However, if you have somebody else that you want to Google Duo with, then you can actually invite them as well, and I can send them like a text message or an email. Just to reiterate my contact info here so that you guys can contact me for lessons if you're interested in. I've got it all right there. You'll need to add me as a contact if I'm not in your phone. So the next thing that I want to do here is show you just how you're going to make payments with me. Essentially, you can either do it through PayPal, or I can take your card over the phone as well with your card number and all that as well. And you can just get this through the App Store. Yes, you'll have to sign up for PayPal if you're going through the PayPal method. It's very quick and easy, though, and not really all that terribly difficult. You can either put in your card or your bank account information to make that happen. Very simple and easy to go, especially for long-distance setups like this. So, the other thing I'd like to also mention is just the fact that there's going to be a lot of apps that you'll want for just general music that you can dance to. And I'll eventually put out a guide of different songs you can use. I personally use the app called Napster. Napster is a fantastic app that I've been using for years. Spotify is also super popular. And then so is Amazon Music. And then, of course, the iTunes Store as well if you have an Apple device. So I recommend any of those. If you need to, you can use Pandora, but it's less reliable because you can't choose specific songs unless you're subscribed to them, of course. Then the other thing I'm of course going to mention here is that if you guys are interested in watching video content that I've made and subscribing to my service, you can go and get the Vimeo app. Yes, I can pronounce it. You can actually check out a lot of tutorial guides that I have on there. Now, if you're interested in just signing up for the private lesson, maybe you've not met me before or messaged me or anything, but you do want to schedule a lesson to meet me, then one thing you can do is go to my website at sparkupdance.com, and then you can go down there. You'll see where it says video tutorial. That's actually this video, so ta-da! But you'll want to click the book now with Spark Up Dance. Now, when this pops up, I want you to make sure that you read everything on this left-hand side, both about the company, how the appointment works, and our cancellation policy. This is really important just because I don't want there to be any miscommunications, especially about the part where as you're doing this sign-up process, you'll need to wait for a confirmation to make sure this appointment's actually been approved. If it's not been approved, then just assume that it's not. And I will get back to you and tell you why it wasn't approved and when we can reschedule. But essentially, you'll just look for a date, choose the time like that, and then you'll put in your name, email, or phone number, and then book. And it's that simple. Thank you guys so much for watching. I can't wait to see you guys next time.